The story begins in Lamu Island, a serene and historic coastal town in Kenya, known for its Swahili architecture, pristine beaches, and rich cultural heritage. Here, nestled along the shores of the Indian Ocean, lies Peponi Villa, a luxurious beachfront property that is part of the exclusive Shella Resort. Peponi Villa is a stunning blend of traditional Swahili design and modern luxury. Its whitewashed walls, intricate wooden carvings, and thatched roof give it a rustic charm, while the interior boasts a cozy sitting area, a small kitchenette, and a bedroom with large windows that offer breathtaking views of the ocean. Outside, a private veranda overlooks the turquoise waters, with the sound of waves lapping against the shore creating a tranquil atmosphere. The Shella Resort is renowned for its world-class amenities, including gourmet Swahili cuisine, live Taarab music performances, and guided tours of Lamu's historic sites. Guests who stay at Peponi Villa are treated to personalized service, making it a favorite spot for honeymooners and couples seeking a romantic escape. However, beneath its idyllic facade, Peponi Villa has a dark history, one that has left it shrouded in mystery and infamy. Locals whisper about a tragic event that took place there years ago, an event so horrifying that it has earned the villa the nickname the Silent Retreat. The story shifts to Nairobi, where we meet Jabali and Amina, a married couple in their late 30s. Jabali, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a gentle demeanor, works as a wildlife photographer. He's an introvert who finds solace in nature and prefers the quiet of his home to the noise of the city. Amina, on the other hand, is a vibrant and outgoing surgical nurse who thrives on social interactions and adventure. The couple has been married for 10 years and has a 9-year-old daughter named Zawadi. While their differences once brought them together, their marriage has been strained over the past year. Jabali's introversion has deepened into what Amina believes is depression. He rarely leaves the house, avoids social gatherings, and spends most of his time in his home office, editing photos or watching documentaries. Amina, feeling isolated and unfulfilled, has grown increasingly frustrated. She's tried to encourage Jabali to seek therapy or join her for couples counseling, but he's refused. By the start of the new year, Amina had reached her breaking point and told Jabali she wanted a divorce. Devastated, Jabali begged for another chance. He promised to change and vowed to do whatever it took to save their marriage. Unbeknownst to Amina, he began planning a surprise Valentine's Day getaway to Lamu Island, hoping to rekindle their love. In the weeks leading up to the trip, Jabali became increasingly secretive. Amina noticed him making frequent phone calls, often stepping outside or lowering his voice when she entered the room. He would then jot down notes in a small leather-bound journal, which he kept hidden in his office drawer. The only clue Jabali gave Amina was to pack something elegant. Intrigued but skeptical, Amina complied, wondering what her husband had planned. On the afternoon of Valentine's Day, the couple dropped Zawadi off at her grandmother's house in Karen and set off on their journey. As they drove to the airport, Amina repeatedly asked Jabali about their destination, but he only grinned and said, "It's a surprise." The couple boarded a small plane from Wilson Airport in Nairobi, and after a smooth flight, they landed at Manda Airstrip on Lamu Island. From there, they were whisked away by a traditional dhow boat, its sails billowing in the ocean breeze as it glided across the crystal-clear waters. Amina couldn't help but smile as the boat approached Shella Beach, where the Shella Resort stood like a jewel against the backdrop of the Indian Ocean. The resort was a paradise of swaying palm trees, white sandy beaches, and lush tropical gardens. As they stepped onto the shore, they were greeted by the warm smiles of the resort staff, who offered them fresh coconut water and cold towels. The receptionist, a friendly woman named Fatima, checked them in and handed them their room key. "You're staying at Peponi Villa," Fatima said with a smile. "It's our most exclusive property. You'll love it." Amina's eyes lit up with excitement. She had heard of Peponi Villa before. It was often featured in travel magazines as one of the most romantic getaways in East Africa. Jabali, noticing her reaction, felt a surge of pride. His plan was working. They were escorted to the villa by a golf cart, and as they approached, Amina gasped. Peponi Villa was even more beautiful than she had imagined. The traditional Swahili architecture, with its intricate wooden carvings and thatched roof, blended seamlessly with modern luxury. The villa was surrounded by a private garden filled with fragrant frangipani and bougainvillea, and the veranda offered a stunning view of the ocean. Inside, the villa was cozy yet elegant. The sitting area was adorned with colorful Maasai blankets and cushions, and a small kitchenette was stocked with fresh fruits and a bottle of chilled champagne. The bedroom had a large four-poster bed draped with mosquito netting, and the windows open to let in the salty sea breeze. On the coffee table, Amina noticed a small envelope with her name on it. She picked it up and turned to Jabali, who was watching her with a nervous smile. "What's this?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "Open it," Jabali said, his voice tinged with excitement. Inside the envelope was a beautifully designed card. It was a wedding invitation, but not for a real wedding. The card read, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of the year. Join us for an evening of mystery, romance, and intrigue at the Shella Resort's Murder Mystery Dinner Theatre. The event will take place tonight at 7 p.m. in the resort's event hall. Dress to impress." Amina's eyes widened as she read the card. She looked up at Jabali, who was grinning from ear to ear. "A murder mystery dinner?" she asked, her voice filled with delight. Jabali nodded. "I thought it would be something fun and different. You've always loved a good mystery, and I wanted to make this trip special." Amina felt a rush of emotion. For the first time in months, she felt truly seen and appreciated by her husband. She walked over to him and gave him a tight hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is amazing." That evening, the couple dressed in their finest attire, Amina in a flowing red dress and Jabali in a crisp white shirt and tailored trousers, and made their way to the resort's event hall. The hall was beautifully decorated with lanterns and flowers, and round tables were set up for the guests. The murder mystery dinner, titled The Bride Who Cried, was a theatrical performance that involved the audience in solving a fictional crime. The story revolved around a glamorous wedding between a wealthy heiress and a charming but mysterious groom. As the night unfolded, secrets were revealed, alliances were tested, and, ultimately, the groom was found dead. Amina was fully immersed in the performance, enthusiastically interacting with the actors and other guests. She laughed, gasped, and even volunteered to help investigate the crime. Jabali, however, seemed distant. He sat quietly, barely engaging with the performance or the other guests. At one point, Amina leaned over and whispered, "Who do you think did it?" Jabali shrugged. "I don't know. It's just a game, right?" His lack of enthusiasm dampened Amina's mood, but she decided not to make a big deal out of it. After all, Jabali had gone to great lengths to plan this trip, and she didn't want to ruin the evening. After the dinner theatre, the couple walked back to Peponi Villa under a canopy of stars. The warm ocean breeze carried the faint sound of taarab music from the resort's lounge, and the rhythmic crashing of waves against the shore created a soothing backdrop. Amina reached for Jabali's hand, and he took it, giving her a small smile. "That was fun," Amina said, trying to lighten the mood. "I didn't expect the bride's mother to be the killer." "Did you?" Jabali shrugged. "I wasn't really paying attention," he admitted. Amina frowned but decided not to press the issue. Instead, she squeezed his hand and said, "Well, I had a great time. Thank you for planning this." Jabali nodded, his expression softening. "I'm glad you enjoyed it. I just wanted to do something special for you." When they reached the villa, Amina suggested they grab a bottle of wine from the minibar and sit on the veranda to enjoy the night. Jabali agreed, and they spent the next hour sipping wine, laughing, and reminiscing about happier times. For a moment, it felt like the old days, when their love was new, and the world seemed full of possibilities. As the night grew late, Amina stood up and stretched. "I'm going to change into something more comfortable," she said, heading toward the bedroom. Jabali watched her go, a small smile playing on his lips. He felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this trip was the fresh start they needed. Inside the bedroom, Amina opened her suitcase and pulled out a sleek black nightgown. As she changed, her mind wandered to the events of the evening. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off with Jabali. his disinterest during the dinner theater, his distant demeanor, it all felt like a stark contrast to the man who had planned this elaborate getaway. But then she reminded herself of the effort he had put into the trip. The villa, the dinner theater, the champagne, it was all so thoughtful. Maybe she was overthinking things. As she stepped out of the bedroom, she noticed Jabali standing by the front door, locking it. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice light but curious. "Just making sure we're secure," Jabali replied, turning to her with a smile. "You never know who might be wandering around at this hour." Amina chuckled. "This is Lamu, not Nairobi. I think we're safe." Jabali walked over to her and took her hands in his. "I just want everything to be perfect," he said, his voice earnest. Amina smiled and leaned in to kiss him. For a moment, it felt like they were truly reconnecting. But then, something shifted. Amina pulled away and walked over to her handbag, which was sitting on the coffee table. She rummaged through it for a moment before pulling out a small syringe. Jabali's eyes widened. "What's that?" he asked, his voice tinged with unease. Amina turned to him, her expression calm but cold. "It's something to help you relax," she said, her voice steady. Before Jabali could react, she stepped forward and plunged the syringe into his arm. He gasped, his body stiffening as the drug took effect. "Amina, what?" he managed to choke out, his voice barely above a whisper. Amina watched as Jabali's legs gave out and he collapsed onto the floor. His eyes were wide with fear and confusion, but he was completely paralyzed, unable to move or speak. "I'm sorry, Jabali," Amina said, her voice devoid of emotion. "But this is the only way." She walked over to the kitchenette and grabbed a bottle of lighter fluid from under the sink. Returning to Jabali, she knelt beside him and began pouring the fluid over his face and chest. Jabali's eyes filled with tears as he realized what was happening. He wanted to scream, to fight back, but his body refused to obey. All he could do was watch in horror as his wife struck a match and dropped it onto him. The flames erupted instantly, engulfing Jabali in a fiery blaze. Amina stood back, her face illuminated by the flickering light, and watched as the fire consumed him. When she was sure the job was done, she calmly walked out the back door, leaving it slightly ajar. She made her way to the resort lobby, where she put on a convincing act of panic. "Help! There's a fire at Peponi Villa," she cried, her voice trembling. "My husband, he's still inside." The resort staff sprang into action the moment Amina raised the alarm. The night manager, Ali, immediately called the local fire brigade and rushed to Peponi Villa with a group of staff members. Guests gathered in the lobby, murmuring in shock and concern as the smell of smoke filled the air. Meanwhile, Philip, a guest staying at the resort with his family, overheard Amina's frantic cries. He had been sitting on his balcony, enjoying the cool night air, when he noticed the commotion. Without hesitation, he grabbed his cousin Musa, and the two men ran toward Peponi Villa. By the time they arrived, the villa was engulfed in flames. Thick, black smoke billowed from the windows, and the heat was intense. Philip tried the front door, but it was locked. He pounded on it and shouted, "Is anyone in there?" There was no response. Philip and Musa ran around to the back of the villa, where they found the sliding glass door slightly ajar. Philip pushed it open, and a cloud of smoke rushed out, forcing him to step back. "We need to get inside," Musa shouted, his voice filled with urgency. Philip dropped to his knees and crawled through the door, staying low to avoid the smoke. The interior of the villa was a chaotic inferno, flames licked the walls, and the air was thick with acrid smoke. Philip's eyes watered, and he coughed violently as he inched forward. In the middle of the bedroom, he spotted a figure lying on the floor. It was Jabali, his body charred and motionless. Philip grabbed his leg and shook him, trying to wake him up, but it was clear that Jabali was beyond help. "Musa! Help me!" Philip shouted, his voice hoarse from the smoke. Musa crawled in and together they dragged Jabali's body toward the door. The heat was unbearable, and the smoke made it difficult to see, but they managed to pull him out just as the fire brigade arrived. The fire brigade quickly extinguished the flames, but the damage to Peponi Villa was extensive. The once beautiful villa was now a charred shell, its walls blackened and its roof partially collapsed. As the smoke cleared, the resort staff and guests gathered around, their faces filled with shock and sorrow. Amina stood at the edge of the crowd, her hands covering her face as she sobbed. "My husband, he's gone," she wailed, her voice breaking. The local police were called to the scene, and an investigation was launched immediately. The lead investigator, Inspector Wanjiku, was a no-nonsense officer with a reputation for solving even the most complex cases. She arrived at the resort within an hour, accompanied by a team of forensic experts. Inspector Wanjiku began by interviewing Amina, who was visibly distraught. "Can you tell me what happened?" Wanjiku asked, her tone calm but firm. Amina wiped her tears and took a deep breath. "We were in the villa, enjoying the evening. Jabali went to lock the door, and I went to change into something more comfortable. When I came out, I smelled smoke. I saw flames coming from the bedroom, and I tried to get to Jabali, but the fire was too intense. I ran to the lobby to get help." Wanjiku listened carefully, her sharp eyes studying Amina's face. There was something about the woman's story that didn't quite add up. "Did you notice anything unusual before the fire started?" Wanjiku asked. Amina hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. "No, nothing unusual. It was just a normal evening." Wanjiku nodded but made a mental note to dig deeper. She then turned her attention to Philip and Musa, who had risked their lives to try to save Jabali. "What did you see when you entered the villa?" Wanjiku asked Philip. Philip recounted the events, describing how they had found Jabali's body and dragged him out of the burning villa. "It was too late," Philip said, his voice heavy with regret. "He was already gone." Wanjiku thanked the men for their bravery and moved on to inspect the villa. The forensic team had already begun their work, collecting evidence and taking photographs of the scene. As Wanjiku walked through the charred remains of the villa, she noticed something unusual near the bedroom door, a small, partially melted syringe. She carefully bagged it as evidence, her mind racing with possibilities. Over the next few days, the investigation uncovered several troubling details. The forensic report revealed that Jabali had traces of a powerful muscle relaxant in his system, a drug commonly used in surgical procedures. The syringe found at the scene matched the description of the drug, and further tests confirmed that it had been used on Jabali shortly before his death. Inspector Wanjiku also discovered that Amina had access to the drug through her job as a surgical nurse. When questioned, Amina denied any involvement, but her story began to crumble under Wanjiku's relentless scrutiny. Meanwhile, interviews with the resort staff and guests revealed that Amina had been behaving strangely in the days leading up to the trip. One staff member recalled overhearing a heated phone conversation in which Amina had said, "I can't do this anymore. I need out." Another guest mentioned seeing Amina arguing with Jabali at the dinner theater, though Amina had claimed they were just discussing the performance. As the evidence mounted, Wanjiku confronted Amina with the findings. "The syringe, the drug in Jabali's system, your access to the medication, it all points to you," Wanjiku said, her voice firm. "Why did you do it?" Amina's composure finally broke. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed. "I didn't want to, but I had no choice. He was suffocating me. I couldn't take it anymore." Wanjiku leaned forward, her eyes piercing. "So you killed him?" Amina nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes." Amina's confession sent shockwaves through the resort and the local community. Inspector Wanjiku pressed her for more details, and the full story began to emerge. "It wasn't just about the marriage," Amina admitted, her voice trembling. "I was having an affair with someone else, a younger man named Kito. He's a marine biologist working in Mombasa. We met at a medical conference last year, and things just happened." She paused, wiping away tears. "Jabali found out about it a few months ago. He was devastated, but he didn't want to lose me. He begged me to end the affair and give our marriage another chance. I agreed, but I didn't mean it. I was already checked out. Inspector Wanjiku listened intently, her expression unreadable. So you planned this trip to kill him? Amina nodded. I knew he would do anything to save our marriage. When he told me about the surprise getaway, I saw it as an opportunity. I brought the syringe with me, just in case. I didn't know if I'd actually go through with it, but when the moment came, I did. She broke down again, her sobs echoing in the small interrogation room. I didn't want to hurt him, but I couldn't see another way out. I thought if I made it look like an accident, no one would suspect me. Amina's trial was a media sensation, drawing attention from across the country. The prosecution painted her as a cold-blooded killer who had meticulously planned her husband's murder. The defense argued that she had acted in a moment of desperation, driven by years of emotional neglect and a failing marriage. The evidence was damning. The syringe, the drug in Jabali's system, and Amina's access to the medication all pointed to premeditation. Witnesses testified about her strange behavior in the days leading up to the trip, and Quito, the man she had been having an affair with, confirmed that she had spoken to him about wanting to end her marriage. The most chilling moment came when the forensic expert took the stand. He explained how the drug succinylcholine would have paralyzed Jabali instantly, leaving him fully conscious but unable to move or speak. He would have been aware of everything happening to him, the expert said. He would have felt the lighter fluid being poured on him and the flames engulfing his body. It would have been an excruciating and terrifying way to die. The courtroom fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Just when it seemed like the case was closed, a surprising twist emerged. During the trial, Inspector Wanjiku received an anonymous tip about a hidden compartment in Jabali's journal. The journal, which had been recovered from the charred remains of Peponi Villa, was brought to the court and examined. Inside the compartment, investigators found a letter addressed to Amina. It read, "My dearest Amina, if you're reading this, it means something has happened to me. I want you to know that no matter what, I will always love you. I know our marriage hasn't been perfect, but I truly believed we could find our way back to each other. This trip was my way of showing you how much you mean to me. I hope it reminds you of the love we once shared. Forever yours, Jabali." The letter was dated the day before their trip to Lamu. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as the letter was read aloud. Amina, who had maintained a stoic demeanor throughout the trial, broke down in tears. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know he felt that way." Despite the emotional impact of the letter, the evidence against Amina was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 2 days before reaching a verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. Amina was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As she was led out of the courtroom, she turned to Inspector Wanjiku and said, "I hope he forgives me." The tragedy at Peponi Villa left a lasting mark on the Shella Resort and the community of Lamu. The villa, once a symbol of romance and luxury, became a haunting reminder of betrayal and loss. Locals began referring to it as the Silent Retreat, a name that captured its eerie stillness and dark history. For Jabali's family, the pain of his loss was compounded by the revelation of his unwavering love for Amina. His journal, filled with notes about their early days together and his hopes for their future, became a cherished keepsake for their daughter, Zawadi. As for Amina, she spent her days in prison, haunted by the memory of Jabali's final moments. She often wondered if things could have been different if she had chosen to communicate instead of betray, to forgive instead of destroy. But some choices, once made, can never be undone. Years later, Zawadi visited Lamu for the first time. She stood on the veranda of Peponi Villa, which had been restored but remained unoccupied, and read her father's letter. The wind carried the sound of the ocean, and for a moment, she felt his presence. "I forgive you, Mama," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the waves. "And I hope you found peace." As she walked away, the villa stood silent, its secrets buried beneath the sands of time.